Welcome! You are listening to the CRM Success Show, where you will hear from CRM executives who have overseen some of the most interesting and complex CRM implementations. Your hosts, David Mastery and Kira Whitey, will be bringing you real stories, real insight. Follow along on social media for updates on new episode releases, exclusive content, and much more. Enjoy the show, and thanks for listening.
Hey, welcome to the CRM Success Show. Today we're talking with Suzie Campbell, Assistant Director of Salesforce at Start Early. So welcome, Suzie.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Suzie, we first met rather recently. It was at the Chicago World Tour in December, just gone. I remember it was absolutely freezing cold, as you'd expect. And we were able to sit down and talk a little bit more about the idea of the podcast. So a couple of months later, it's great to have you join us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know it's been a long time coming. At least it feels like it.
We got there in the end. That's all that matters. So, and you obviously listened to a few episodes. You wanted to, get a feel for it. So, all right, fantastic. Well, thank you. We're looking forward to learning a bit more about you and your story. So just to kick us off, tell us a little bit about you, Suzie, how long you've been in the ecosystem, what you do, what your role entails, and who is Start Early.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Suzie Campbell, and I'm the Assistant Director for Salesforce at Start Early. I first joined the Salesforce ecosystem 6 years ago. I had been working in higher education for a decade and found it really unsatisfying, and heard about this crazy thing called Salesforce. And so I did a Salesforce Academy bootcamp and started working at Start Early as a junior admin a couple weeks later. So Start Early is a nonprofit based in Chicago, and we do research that helps inform policies and programs related to early childhood education. We have a national impact and support babies and families in all 50 states. So it's a really great mission, a really great organization. I'm excited that I've been there for 6 years.
Amazing. And you mentioned you pivoted from the university space, but how you were supporting projects, you were doing that program coordinator role. Did you find that was a natural move into Salesforce administration at the time? A lot of overlap, just different kind of languages, let's say.
The thing that I've always said in my career, my entire career from working at Starbucks right out of college to now, is that I just like to help people. And there are lots of different ways to help people. And so when I was in administrative roles in the higher ed space, that was helping to make other people's jobs easier. I made sure the copy machine was running and that conference rooms were all set up. And that was all to support the people who were directly supporting our students. And now working in the Salesforce ecosystem as an admin, I was helping to help users have a better experience in Salesforce and to get their work done and be able to support the great work we do and our mission at Start Early. So at the end of the day, I just really like helping people, no matter where it is and what kind of role it's in.
Perfect. We're going to talk a bit about how you got your break in a moment, but three promotions in 4 or 5 years. You're now assistant director. How big is the org? Like, give us an idea of the number of users. How big is the organization as a whole? And what do you use when it comes to Salesforce?
Yeah, so Start Early has about 450 employees nationwide. We operate in, I think, main hubs in 3 or 4 different states. And we have right now 120 Salesforce users, but our max recently has been about 170 to 190. We just had a little change in priorities for the organization and who's using Salesforce and who's not, plus some overdue user maintenance, which I think everyone can identify with, that there's those users that aren't using it anymore and you need to deactivate them. So we use Salesforce. We use NPSP, the Nonprofit Success Pack, to manage our fundraising and grant management efforts. And then our program management is also in Salesforce. So we have professional development courses that we offer to early childhood educators. And we track some information from our learning management system in Salesforce related to that. And then technical assistance is a common thing nonprofits do. It's where you essentially have office hours at other nonprofits in order to support their mission as well and give them professional support. And those are in Salesforce, as well as some traditional sales. So we have consulting services that we sell, as well as those learning courses. And so we track that in Salesforce as well. So lots of different things.
Perfect. So I want to rewind the clock a little bit, Suzie. So we're going to go back to January 2020. And at that time, you were in between, trying to learn what you needed to learn to get that first break into Salesforce. And one of the things that really stuck out, and I don't think it's by accident that we met, was the power of networking. But that's something you're passionate about in general. We're going to talk more about that, but also how important it was to getting your first break in the ecosystem 6 years ago. The time of the pandemic, there's so much uncertainty, right? So tell us a little bit about, you made this decision to get in the Salesforce ecosystem. Walk us through, what did you do next? You mentioned boot camp, but get into the specifics of that. How did you go about, starting that journey?
Yeah. So the journey actually started in July of 2019, so a little bit further back. And I was at this, I'm going to call it like a women's empowerment retreat. It's like part professional development, part personal development. And I was learning a lot about myself, about my career. And that's when somebody mentioned Salesforce, and like she pulled out her phone and said she was a Salesforce administrator and is showing me all the different things that she could do and what she manages. And it was literally a 90-second conversation. And I'm like, wait, this seems like something that would, like, I would be good at this. But I didn't really know anything about it. And I was looking for new roles, and I saw a scholarship for the Salesforce Academy Bootcamp from a company called the Mom Project. So they help to place moms in jobs at companies that want to hire moms. And so they had sponsored this bootcamp. So I was delivering groceries. I was taking care of a baby and a preschooler, and I was doing this boot camp in the evening, and it was really resonating because it just fit like immediately. I'm like, I can do this. Like this is my next step. So I got on LinkedIn and I just searched Salesforce administrator to see if I had any first level connections of somebody who does this job already. And I didn't, but I had one single second level connection. And so I reached out to our mutual contact and I said, hey, can you put me in touch with this person? Because she wasn't responding to my LinkedIn messages. And so I'm like, I really want to talk to her. So Sam Link and I got lunch a couple weeks later, and halfway through our conversation, she said, there's an opening on my team and you should apply for it. And I hadn't even thought to look on their website to see if there were any job openings before that call, because I just wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn about her job and what she likes about it, what she does every day. And it turned out to be the best decision I've ever made.
Probably the best lunch you ever went to, right?
Yes. Totally worth the, $30 or whatever it took to buy us lunch.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, look, you can say you're 1 for 1, right? You know, the chance of that happening for somebody today may be a bit slim, but I think there's a lot there, right? It's being proactive first and foremost. The job's not going to come find you. You got to go out there and find it for yourself. Being brave, putting yourself out there. Being a bit vulnerable perhaps, and being open, like, look, I need help. Can you help me? Not being afraid to ask for help, and introductions, and more importantly, I think taking that first step by offering to meet somebody in person with a coffee or a lunch or whatever is so much more authentic than just a telephone call with a random person, right? So let's say that didn't materialize. What would you have done next? Would you have continued to focus on like people you were connected to locally, do you think? Or and I know obviously, did you fall into nonprofit, or was that a selective decision to focus in the nonprofit industry?
Yeah. All right, you had a couple questions there. So I mean, higher ed is its own kind of nonprofit. We support students in their education. And so I'd already been in this mission-driven space for 10 years. And so it felt natural for me to continue to look at nonprofits. Before I decided on Salesforce as my next path, I guess, I was applying for jobs at other nonprofits because it was comfortable and it fits my values. And so I think Sam being at a nonprofit was really great coincidence because it did fit me so well. And if that hadn't worked out, if I had never gotten in touch with her, it would have definitely taken me longer to find a role for 2 reasons. One, because I did feel a little lost. I'm like, this is brand new to me, and I've got this good gut feeling, but I don't really know anything about it. And also, this was, February going into March of 2020. I started at Start Early March 4th, 2020. And so 10 days later, the world shut down and I was suddenly a remote employee for the first time in a brand new career for the first time. So having a supportive team was so critical in my success because I really loved the team. I loved the work I was doing. And even though that time was so stressful for all of us, it felt uncomplicated to just kind of join and get started.
Were there and are there any community groups that you've found along the way were particularly useful in brainstorming different ideas, or I've got this issue, what do you do in your organization? Because the Ohana in itself is very collaborative, but I know nonprofits especially, they like to help each other out too. So what did you go to in those scenarios?
Yeah. So at that lunch, Sam had actually told me about the Chicago Nonprofit User Group, and they had a meeting, I think a week later. And so I decided to go. And I remember meeting the leaders at that meeting, Cassie and Rob, and everyone was just so nice and supportive. And they start every meeting introducing yourself, saying something that you're looking to get for that day, what you need support on, what are you looking for, and then also what can you offer. And so everybody had something to bring to the table of, well, I'm good at Service Cloud, or if you need help navigating grants management or whatever it may be. And I immediately felt connected in the ecosystem. And I think that happening before I even got my first job was, it's so important. I almost just said it was magical because that's what this community is about. And now 6 years later, I'm, I would say very involved in the Chicago Nonprofit User Group. I pop over to the San Francisco Nonprofit User Group meetings because they're supportive too. Same with St. Louis occasionally, because it doesn't matter where you live. You want to talk about the same stuff and learn from each other. And And that's, I think, the goal of all of these groups now that everything is mostly virtual.
Agreed. I think you hit something on the a nail on the head there a moment ago. Obviously, we still speak to a lot of people trying to get their break into the ecosystem, and it's looking at, like, let's say you're a teacher targeting higher ed. At least you know the industry context. If you started as a personal banker and you want to become a Salesforce admin, target banks, right? At least you know the industry knowledge, the acronyms, the process. Start within the verticals that you know, and then you can decide, once you've got the actual physical experience, you've got your foot in the door for a couple of years, then you can go outside of industry. But people overlook that, and also locality as well, targeting those in-person jobs. I think in an ideal world, that's an ideal way to start, because you learn a lot quicker from being around people, right? You didn't have that choice. You were forced into going remote. So fantastic. Okay, well, talking about things in your user group that people put their hand up and say, look, this is my strength, this is where I want to learn. I know, because we talked about it before, that one of your strengths is data, or one of your areas you're passionate about. So also an area that our co-host Masri is passionate about is data. So Maz, over to you to talk about data.
Yeah, so I know you're on the board of Dreamin in Data, which you get to the conference in Chicago. And I believe it's upcoming next month in May, or a month and a half from now, from the actual recording. Yeah, why don't you tell us a bit about that, and how someone who wants to go should sign up?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dreaming in Data is the only data-focused Salesforce community conference. The first one was held in November of 2024. And that was the first place actually I ever presented at a conference. So it holds a special place in my heart. But we are really focused on conversations around data that support all forms of data. So we're going to be talking about MuleSoft and Informatica. We're going to be talking about data strategy, data health, data structures, data 360, formerly known as Data Cloud. And over the course of 2 days, we're going to have 50 sessions that all have different topics. And why I love this conference so much, and joined the board as a secretary, is because we all just want to, from the first conference and from the board working together and conversations I've had, we all just want to learn, and we're all just kind of data nerds, and we want to talk about data. And that first Dreaming in Data, I think, was the first place that I really realized that data was my passion. You can't have, strategy, Salesforce strategy, without data strategy. And so really focusing in on data quality is kind of what keeps me going now. To come to Dreaming in Data, our website is dreamingindata.org, and you can register today for early bird pricing. It's May 19th and 20th, and then on the 21st, we're going to have workshops that day. I think it's going to be 6 half-day workshops or 3 full-day workshops. I should know exactly how we're framing that, but those details are being worked out still. But Chicago is my city. It's a fantastic city, and everyone should come, because May is going to be gorgeous, and there's lots of stuff to do beyond just the conference.
So you're actually speaking, right, this year?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, what do you give us a little preview?
So I'm doing a presentation called The Art of Letting Go. So I will be talking about my strategy for data migration and doing and creating new orgs. And so I have a 3-part data strategy of data to store, data to toss, and data to keep and bring with you. So I'm going to be going into how that's going to work for Start Early as we consider, what's the future of our CRM.
So store, I assume you mean archive somewhere else, outside system, which is bring with you is migrate into, and toss is just out.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, let's dive into that. How do you decide on what category to put something into?
Yeah. So a good data governance policy and data retention policy is kind of key in this. So there has to be organizational alignment on what data can and should be archived. But I use a tool called Cuneiform. It's the only native data profiling tool in Salesforce that brings in metadata dependencies. So we've been Cuneiform customers for a couple of years now, and it allows me to see if a field is being used. So what the field level population, like how often it's populated, and if it's used in any reports, on any page layouts, or in any automations. And so by being able to look at our fields so granularly, we can see what data points do we actually need. So we currently, at Start Early, we have over 500 fields on contacts and opportunities, and it's been a big sticking point for us. And by using Cuneiform, we can see what we're actually using so that we don't have to bring over the stuff we're not using. We can archive it. And then as far as records go, thinking about how to determine if a record can be archived completely. Is it because there hasn't been activity on it for 3 years or more? Is it because, like whatever reason, we determine that it can be archived? Being able to do that is the second way of cleaning up that data and getting this limited data set. And so that's where I start.
So Kuni lives in Salesforce, right? So if you're coming from another system, I guess you can't really use it. Personally, I do something very similar, but I have like proprietary tools that
Yeah.
I would just run against like a standard database to check like population density, something very, very similar. But usually I would do that to determine like the mapping doc as part of the mapping procedure for the data for the data migration. Um, so so it's interesting because Salesforce doesn't charge you per rows. They don't really charge you storage, right? They charge you per record. So if you have additional fields on the record, it doesn't really cost you anything. Did that go into your strategy?
I mean, it's not about cost, it's about data quality. So especially if you're moving to AI, having fields and records that you're not using anymore makes it so your data is less reliable. And our cost, so we were reaching storage capacity. We were at 86% of our storage capacity at one point. And so we were getting up there, and we'd have to archive a whole bunch of stuff or upgrade. That's what we were facing. And it really, a lot of that was emails. And so if you have a contact and you have 100 emails associated with them, if you archive that contact and all records associated with it because you haven't actually emailed them in 7 years, then that's also a good way to clean up storage, because not just fields or records take up storage, but it's all those attachments and files and everything too.
Yeah, it's actually a pet peeve of mine with Salesforce, particularly like mail blasts. You have the same email stored like sometimes hundreds and hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's definitely an area to clean up. Like nobody cares about newsletter blasts and that kind of stuff. Um, awesome. So so CRM posed a very unique data challenge, and that's that data goes stale without doing anything. Where right, so if you're looking at an ERP system, companies aren't really moving, their phone numbers aren't changing, order history obviously is set in stone, that ain't changing. When you're talking CRM, they think that CRM data goes stale at like 20% a year almost, just because people switch companies, when they move, their phone number changes, right, all sorts of that kind of stuff. So do you have a strategy for dealing with that? But that's probably the biggest, I don't know, one of the biggest contributors to bad CRM data. It's just that it, by nature of time passing, it kind of goes stale or bad. Um, the other one is obviously just people entering bad stuff
Yeah.
or not entering it at all.
Yes. Not logging something in Salesforce leads to that stale data, because somebody can be emailing someone out of Outlook and then not putting it in Salesforce, and then nothing happens. So definitely not logging things is big there. But to answer your question of, let me repeat it back, of so I can remember what you said, of
Data
dealing
going
with,
stale just by
yeah,
past time passage. Yeah.
stale data. So one thing about NPSP is it uses a household account model and it has affiliations. So the goal is to have one contact and then multiple affiliations connected to it. So if someone does move to a different company, and we know that, then we can add an affiliation to say, this place used to be your place of employment. This is where it is now, and still be updating the same contact. So we can track over time people's engagement with us, regardless of where they work and where they're associated with. And so in theory, all of that should continue to be updated if someone does move companies. I think that this probably isn't something that I've started thinking about very directly yet. I will now, obviously. But one thing that I have struggled with the nonprofit data model in general is this concept of affiliations and having one contact be for everything. And so thinking about different ways people are engaging, maybe the base CRM, like your email address, your personal email address is potentially always going to be the same. Some people switch over time, but I've had my Gmail since, 2008 or 2002 something. And I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but having different ways people are engaging with you through kind of a different data model, I think can help with stale data. So if it's an intentional duplicate model, or the way you're looking at your integration separately, that I think, can be an influence too. I don't think that actually answers your question, though. I just talked in a
No, it does.
circle for a minute.
It does. It absolutely does. I think basically what you're saying is that the staleness, let's say in air quotes, if that's a thing, is really field dependent, right? So email address is probably going to last longer than phone numbers. Phone numbers are pretty sticky nowadays. Work email address, not as much. Employer, not as much. Um, and you are right. The account contact history object, I believe, if you change it, it ends one and then moves it automatically. I think that's a core
Mhm.
feature now. It's actually a pretty nice one. That'll handle so you can see their employment history just by nature of changing the company on the contact.
That's awesome.
Cool. Go ahead, Kiro.
Suzie, quick question. So when you were talking about establishing what good data it looks like, data management, data maturity, etc., you basically, reading between the lines, you talk about data governance, right? And there are a few frameworks out there that exist around that in a formal sense. I was curious if you're using one, for example, like DCAM is one that I've heard a lot about, which for those who might not know what it stands for, I had to double check myself, but I knew the acronym, but I didn't necessarily know what it broke down to. Data Management Capability Assessment Model. So I was curious, are you going down that path of a formal framework? And if so, is there any particular framework you're using?
Yes, Start Early is really in our, I'd say, teenager phase of forming data governance committees. So it's something historically that we've struggled with for a variety of reasons. I think that's common at organizations to not have strong data governance. But so we're working on organization-wide data governance and then Salesforce specific. I am not using a specific model, data governance model. We're kind of figuring out what we need right now. And I built a roadmap a couple of years ago that I've presented on, how to build a roadmap when everything has gone wrong, because that's totally what it felt like. Everything went wrong. And so it's really a remediation roadmap. And so I put on there everything that we needed to be thinking about. So data standardization, are all teams using data points in the same way? Sorry, I need a drink really quick. Data retention policies, we already talked about that. Data management, who's responsible for updating, taking care of data ownership. How do we decide who a contact, is owned by? So all of these sorts of things fit together. And that's kind of what I'm building my governance around is how do we take all of these individual parts of like a good data strategy and bring it into a governance so that everyone kind of has view into it. I don't want this to be a Suzie Campbell thing. Like our business partners need to be part of this. And the part that we're formalizing first is our backlog prioritization method. And so we are going through making that more formal right now. We had a test run last fall that was very rushed and did not go great. I will be honest, it was not my shiniest moment as a Salesforce director, but it taught me a lot of things. And so as I'm developing these systems and policies and practices, sometimes you have to like do something wrong to figure out how to do it right. And so now we're getting into this next phase where we can really start talking about all of our projects and priorities as an organization together and not just as my team trying to figure out whose thing goes first and who needs to wait.
So look, with to what extent you feel comfortable sharing, because it might help somebody else out there who's going on this journey. Was there something that perhaps you overlooked in that scenario that you thought afterwards, oops, you said it wasn't your greatest moment? And look, we appreciate you being honest and sharing and being vulnerable for a second. What was that? Like, why do you think you didn't get the outcome that you were hoping to get in that moment?
Confusion due to lack of communication on my part. So I'd been talking about how this was coming and we were going to do this project prioritization stuff for months, but I wasn't really describing to people what we were going to be doing. And so in my head, everything made sense. And I came into this meeting and I'm like, all right, this is what we're doing. And people didn't really know what I was talking about. I didn't give enough detail. And there were a couple other like key hiccups along the way. Like some people had forwarded the meeting invite and I didn't really realize it. So then we're voting on things and 2 people from marketing were there, but only 1 from development, or for example, and I didn't catch it. So these were all things that I now realize, oh, that should have been obvious to me back then, but I was thinking about myself, not about my business partners in that situation. And that happens. Like we get busy, we get overwhelmed, or even it's just something new and you have to learn from your experience to do it better. So now I have a more detailed document that I'm going to be distributing to our business partners. We're going to try this again in the next couple weeks. And I think we're going to set ourselves up for more success because I made those mistakes. And I think I accept mistakes as necessary evil sometimes because it's how I learn the best. Unfortunately, when you make a big mistake, you're like, okay, we're not going to repeat that again. And honestly, I don't think people talk about that enough. Like, no one sits on a podcast here and says, I screwed up real big and my business partners were not happy with me, but we're getting past it.
We've had a few of that on the show. Particularly, we tried to get, the hurt stories too. I mean, look, if you don't have failure, you're not aiming high enough. The end of the day, it's just a metric. Anybody who's never fails, they're not aiming high enough. which means you're not reaching your full potential, right? To reach your full potential, you have to overshoot and have some level of failure. That's okay. The other thing I think is a big part of what you're saying, and honestly being a little bit too hard on yourself for, is people are just not that predictable. They're just not, and it's hard to know how they're going to react or behave in various situations. I do have another quick question on governance. Um, are you a fan of like data stewards or having the
Mm.
record owner be responsible for maintaining their own data? I mean, that's kind of the two schools, right? Either you own your data, you maintain your data, or you have a data steward or data stewarding team whose job it is to kind of enforce and keep things up to date.
I think the complicated thing about Start Early is we have so many people using the same data in different ways. And so somebody may, be a donor and they have attended one of our events before, and or they are a program participant and attended, we have a national home visiting conference. And so different teams care about data in different ways. So we're figuring this out. There's no good way right now how we're managing this, because business models are complicated, just as complicated as data models are. And we need to figure it out. But I will say that we are not going to put 4 user lookup fields to show ownership of a record, as it was suggested a couple years ago. So I don't know. We'll get there.
Count teams, use account teams.
Huh?
Use the account teams.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That we've thought about a lot of things, and we're going to figure it out. But one, and I don't know, we didn't actually talk about this before. One thing I did do is I did a data cloud proof of concept in a week and found that there wasn't overlap between our donors and our program participants. And that was a super helpful first step of figuring out how we talk about this even. And so I gathered more data so I can make data-driven decisions. And that's been sitting in my pocket as we do everything that we're doing.
I want to ask you a quick question on go back to the failure side, right? Expensive lesson learned, maybe we'll call it that instead. But how, well, basically what you were saying is way I interpreted it, was maybe too many voices at the table, and a lack of equal representation from each department. Some voices were louder because there was more. Would you agree with that? Like, was that the reason why it failed? Because maybe the data champions in each work stream were not established beforehand, and then it was kind of like, let's say you have 5 from marketing, nobody from sales, and it's like, it skewed a bit more that way because of that reason?
We tried to have one person from all of the major departments that use Salesforce. We have 24 different business units who use Salesforce in slightly different ways. And so we didn't have 24 people at the table, but it wasn't far off. And so part of that too is we wanted director level and above giving us feedback on, is this aligned with the organization's goals right now to be able to do this project? But maybe those people aren't the ones that are using Salesforce day to day. And so then they want to bring, their super user who is using Salesforce day to day and have them vote too. So that I think is a big part of it. Another big part is that we just historically haven't been talking about this. So no one had to think about it. And there are certain business units that would represent multiple departments. So our business development operations unit would bring in information for marketing and development and, our earned revenue streams. But we wanted somebody from each of those units there too, but they weren't responsible for managing this data for a long time. So there's both an onboarding, I think, that needs to be set up of why is this important? Why are we doing this? And how can you help us? as well as the, I guess, equity across departments to be able to make sure everyone's voice is heard at the same level.
Yep. Okay, so shifting gears, I want to talk for 5 minutes about 24/7 Suzie. Tell us more about that. For our listeners, you got to start from the beginning because we've got inside info. So what is 24/7 Suzie? Suzie?
Yeah, 24/7 Suzie. So last summer of 2025, I was considering doing some consulting on the side, and I was talking with some friends, and somebody made the joke of having a Slack agent that sounds like me and can just respond to people without me even being a part of it, and then like will escalate things to my email when needed. And I'm like, I can make an agent that sounds like me. Like that's totally a thing that I can do. So I started making a custom GPT, and I didn't really know what it was going to be for at first, but I was working on my road mapping presentation for Dreamforce, and I realized that it was going to be a road mapping agent. So how to assist people as they are creating their own remediation roadmaps. Because after my presentation, there are always people who come up to me and tell me that they feel seen, that that's their instance too. This is how messy they are. And then there's questions, and then there's LinkedIn messages, and then there's, hey, Suzie, can you meet with me? And I like to help people. So I want to say yes, but I'm one person and I have a day job, and I'm doing, these user groups and conferences and stuff. And I'm a single mom and I have a life. So I thought, why not build this agent that can answer people's questions and support them through this? So I was working on this in the evenings, mostly after my kids went to bed. And one of the things that was most important to me is support, because I've had people cry during my presentations because they get it. They feel that. And so when you're talking to somebody, you don't just want them to say, okay, here's step by step how you set this up, and these are, the different timeframes you should use, and these are the categories. Like, that's like this helpful. So I also made Suzie, which I've got my little sticker here, made by Pete Schweiss. He helped me with that. I made her be able to give emotional support too. So if somebody is saying, okay, I'm really overwhelmed, I don't know where to start, she will stop by at first asking, what kind of industry do you work in? Because talking to someone who's at a nonprofit is very different than like a financial services firm or, a consultant or something. And so she wants to know the right language to use in order to connect with somebody, donors versus customers, et cetera. And then, she'll kind of get into what is it that you're doing right now? Are you in the building phase or where you're at? And so she knows my methodology, and she can walk people through step by step how I created my roadmap. Or if you just say, I don't know, I just go home and cry every night because this job is terrible, then she'll go into this emotional support and like compassionate mode where the goal is still to get you back to like, what's your next step? What's your first step? Because I really think that any big project that you're doing, no matter how complicated, messy it is, you need your first step. You just one thing that you can control, and then other stuff falls into place. So that's kind of why I created her and what she does. And she sounds like me. And so, yeah, she will respond using words and the way I do, and I'm really proud of it.
Super cool, really, really cool. Hopefully, when we're speaking to the real Suzie Campbell, not 24/7 Suzie right now. Who knows? But so like, where does Suzie live? Where's she sitting? Like, how do people reach out to 24/7 Suzie if they need support? What, just like they download something and you know, I got no idea. Like, did I download something? You ping. It has a LinkedIn page. You ping it a message, or what happens?
Well, right now it's just a custom GPT. So I have a website, 247suzie.com, and that has a link to the custom GPT. I think with all passion projects, you have to hit a point where you realize it's done. This is really cool and I'm proud of it. And I think that the way I built it could be a really great template to build similar agents for nonprofits to be able to provide that practical and emotional support. But I would love to make it a Slack like agent, or something that will like respond to email or messages like on a chat on a website. But I don't have time for that. So I will sit in a dream world where 24/7 Suzie has a bigger reach.
Amazing. So check that out. Any of our listeners that are listening and thinking, I wouldn't mind experimenting with that and see what 24/7 Suzie would advise. Very cool. I guess you mentioned that might have a shelf life. You talked about maybe Slack integrations or something along those lines next. But I'm curious, why do you think it has a shelf life? Because there are admins out there, developers every day that go into new orgs, maybe struggling, etc. I mean, I would imagine these are questions that are going to get asked time and time again. So I think you got something, I think there's a great idea there. Maybe we'll talk offline about partnering on it. I don't know, but I guess what's your thoughts on that? Like, why do you think it's got a shelf life?
I mean, when you have too many projects and passions, you have to pick and choose what's your most important. And I think that's the only reason that I've put it to the side. I can imagine a future, and maybe I just need the right people to work with on it, but I imagine a future where 24/7, like Sally or whatever sits on a nonprofit's website and she helps to schedule an appointment and then says, how are you feeling? What else do you need? And can have that conversation to maybe it's for STI testing or something, and be able to say like, okay, well, these are the things that are going to happen when you come to your appointment, and get someone feeling comfortable and confident. And like, that is what I would love to do it. I think it's just capacity is the only reason that this is on the back burner.
In the space of 60 seconds, I actually plugged in a few questions into 24/7 Suzie, and pretty good. I'll be honest. I think pretty surprised. It's pretty thorough in terms of recommended practices. And my use case was I've lost my Salesforce admin. I'm a startup. No technical know-how. What should I do? And I got 4 key starter points, to be honest. So could be good for non-technical users, especially, right? So amazing. All right. Moving on from 24/7 Suzie, which we will include in our notes for the podcast that when it goes live. So anybody who wants to have a play around with 24/7 Suzie and check that out on the GPT side, they can. One of the big topics for nonprofits right now is MPSP versus nonprofit cloud. Should I stick? Should I twist? Which one's better? Which one's going to work for us? What are the benefits, pros and cons?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Maz? I'll let you lead this section, but that's what we're going to talk about a little bit over the next 10 minutes.
Yeah. I know you're currently on NPSP, which is the older managed packaged version of it. So what do you think of the two of them and the direction that Salesforce is moving with the core clouds?
Yeah, I think nonprofit cloud is something that kind of has a bad rep right now. When it has since it came out, because people say it's complicated, it's different, and and therefore it's bad. Like, why would we move to this? And I personally don't think complicated is a bad thing. Like, just because something is hard doesn't mean it's not worth doing. And there are different reasons why you would stay in NPSVP versus go to NPC. And part of this is going to be capacity. Like, are you a small organization with one admin, or maybe half an admin, or a couple hours a month with managing services? Like, maybe you're an ideal candidate to stay in NPSP because the data models are different. NPSP is based on a householding model so that you can know, not just what one person, if I give a donation and then my daughter also gives a donation, you can look at our household and see what we gave together. Where in NPC, it's a person account model. And so it's just different architecture. It's just very different. And the way that donations are handled in both systems are different, but it doesn't mean it's bad. And personally, I do think nonprofit cloud is where everyone will end up eventually. At some point, you need to know what's next for your org. If it got messy like mine, and we're currently exploring nonprofit cloud, or whatever we want our future of our CRM to be, remediating our current org, going to a different solution. Legacy orgs are a thing. And if you go to another NPSP instance, are you going to continue to repeat the same mistakes? Or is going to a different data model actually a positive thing to be able to make business process changes and really evaluate what data you need and what's important to the org?
So you're evaluating nonprofit cloud now?
Mm-hmm.
So you mind if we ask how that's going?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll make it easy. Are you guys thinking, yeah, we have to do this now, maybe next year or 2 years out, or never?
For the last 2 years, I've been talking about we need something. We need help for our Salesforce instance at Start Early, and been talking with leadership, with business partners to see what it is that we could do to bare minimum of just get by to go to a whole new instance. And so I have been running CRM discovery, mini RFP, however we're going to think about it, to see if we stay in stay in NPSP, move to nonprofit cloud, or go with an entirely different CRM. And so I've learned a lot, and I have talked with a lot of vendors about why their product is better than Salesforce. And I've talked with our Salesforce account team to really understand what do all systems have to offer and bring to us, and to be able to make a decision based on, features and support and how much staff does it take to manage. And it's a lot. It's a big project. It's not something that's simple to do, but it is something that's important. And it's going. I'm trying to be very tactful here. It's challenging. It's very challenging.
I mean, look, I get it. It's not an easy upgrade path. Unfortunately, anytime you have a hard upgrade path, you're forced into a product selection. You're almost forced into it. I would understand why you're looking outside of Salesforce, right? Right. The upgrade path is just that difficult. Back in the day when cloud systems were becoming big, and you had an on-prem system, and then that same company came out with a cloud offering. Again, the migration was so painful that you basically had no choice but to go back on the market and see what else is there.
Yeah.
Because what are you doing? Could it just as easy or just as hard at the migration to a new product? So that's not surprising. That's not surprising at all. So to get to the chase of the meat of the question, do you feel you need to upgrade because that's where Salesforce is doing all of its future investment in, right? I believe that they're no longer investing in the managed packages across any of the industry. on the industries and all of the investment and on the core cloud versions of the industry verticals, or is there some killer feature or set of features that you feel are needed, that you can benefit from, that it pays to move?
The biggest thing that I like about Nonprofit Cloud is that you can more directly link programs to revenue. So if you have your program management in Nonprofit Cloud, you can use the outcomes and indicators modules in order to connect what are the outcomes of our programs, how effective they are, how many people are we serving, and you can take that information and bring it straight back to the opportunities that are funding those programs. That's not something you could do natively in NPSP. And that I think can have such an impact. If you are able at, like quick report to be able to show your donors, your people, your I can't think of the name for people who give you grants. If you're able to show them easily, this is what your impact is. Huh?
Donors?
No, donors are individual donations.
Grant management.
Funders. That's the word I'm looking for. It's funders. But if you're able to show them easily, like, what is the impact without doing reporting gymnastics of bringing information from a bunch of different systems together in a data warehouse and using, a data visualization tool to do that. Like, if you could bring that straight into an email with a donor, then what can that do to fundraising? I see so much opportunity there. And that's something that I would really love to dig in, but it has to align with organizational, goals and priorities to do that. But that's where I see a lot of potential in Nonprofit Cloud.
Okay, real cool. Any other differences stick out?
Any other differences stick out? I mean, it's just a whole different system, but I think for me, and thinking about switching, is that, change management would be huge because it is different. It's a different data model, and end users don't really know what a data model is. But when I have, done demos and stuff with Nonprofit Cloud, it organizes information differently straight out of the box that, you have to build out an NPSP. So if you want a different homepage in NPSP to be able to show somebody, their portfolio, like what's coming up on the pipeline all day, you have to build that out. Your admin has to do that and build this custom page, right? And our homepages, have historically been kind of plain and boring and don't give much information. And so it's something that user experience is lacking. But if you have well-managed data and you log into Nonprofit Cloud, you can see, like right there on your home screen, like who everyone is that, is in your pipeline. Who do you need to talk to today? What your dashboards you need to pay attention to, have them all right there and be able to look at things more by teams, I think then is available right out of the box. Like, you have to build that right now in NPSP, since at least in our instance, it wasn't, set up right away.
Okay, cool. So before we move on, I wanted to ask you if you can tell us, though Salesforce is really into philanthropy. They have the 1% program, which hits that size. They don't, the 1% program, I think for Salesforce at least, right? It's 1%, I think, of revenue, of time, and of licenses that they give away for free. And then on the nonprofit side, they also have the Power of Us program. Want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Power of Us program gives nonprofits 10 free licenses to Salesforce. Doesn't matter how small or big your nonprofit is, you get 10 if you apply for the program. It was for NPSP licenses, and they have extended that to Nonprofit Cloud licenses as well. So this is a huge impact, because if you are a tiny little nonprofit and you have one FTE, then you're not paying for your CRM. If you're a big nonprofit like us, and those 10 free licenses come in, that's thousands of dollars that are not added to our order form every year. And so it's something that I think can really impact, especially that small nonprofit market, and that can have a huge impact.
So small nonprofits should give it a go. Nonprofit cloud, if it's the free licenses, try it out, test the waters. Because my understanding, my takeaway interpretation was, if you are a smaller nonprofit, sub 30, 40, 50 users, you have a part-time admin, a power user, probably it isn't worth it. Stick to what you've got. But if you're a growing nonprofit, you have a full-time resource, then you could definitely handle nonprofit cloud. In theory, would you agree with that sentiment, or with the free licensing, is it worth at least exploring a little bit and taking that step?
I mean, I think it depends what resourcing would look like for it. And so if you're able to get away with not having to do a ton of customization, moving from something like a different CRM or an MPSP org to nonprofit cloud, I mean, it could be beneficial. But I think when I'm thinking about the small ones, it's that person that's just by themselves. But the thing to and there is somebody in Salesforce ecosystem who talks about this. He says, it's free like a puppy, where, you may get the free licenses, but there are other costs and stuff that has to go along with it. And that phrase has stuck with me because he's right. But again, that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means you have to make sure that you have, the business support to be able to have something like it. Having just done, all these demos with alternative vendors for CRM vendors, there are a lot of people out there that could really benefit from a simple CRM. And then there are people who have more complicated business where they're growing, or they just need something straight up free. And that's where, I think Salesforce can really support nonprofits.
Amazing. So for those that are listening, you won't see the incredible mascot collection that Suzie has. My final, maybe the most difficult question we're going to ask you today, Suzie, who or which one is your favorite mascot out of the collection you have behind you?
Goodness, let me move my camera a little so you can see them all. Who is my favorite? I'm going to say Ruth is my favorite. Because I got her at Dreamforce last year after and presenting on the architect track. So Ruth is the mascot for Salesforce Architects, and so that's going to hold a special place in my heart. Plus, she is big enough to hold all of my conference badges and not fall over. So I have to like her for that too.
Practicality aspect.
I think you're the only one who knows the elephant's name. So Ruth is the elephant for those who would need to Google it like myself.
Yeah.
Yes, Ruth is the elephant. Elephants are honest, right? Is that what they say?
All of the mascots are honest.
Amazing. Well, Suzie, thank you so much for giving us your time today. Great story. I think a true testament of somebody who put themselves out there, worked hard along the way, and is reaping the rewards, right? That's the way it could be done in the ecosystem, and kudos to you for grabbing the bull by its horns. So thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I had a lot of fun. This was great.
Amazing.